You see, something is going to happen. Something wonderful.
My God, it's full of stars.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the NY Patriot Show. Today, I'm very excited to have this guest on. It's another fellow occultist, witch, magician, whatever she calls herself. But she's definitely into the stuff that I am into, and it's always nice to be able to have a chat with a person like that. Today's guest is going to be Megan from 7 Degrees of Wisdom. I had came across her account on Instagram. I was going through it, and I was like, damn, this stuff seems pretty interesting. And I even saw her suggesting books that I've read myself that I haven't seen too many people bring up since I've gotten out of the, I guess, magical community, I'll call it. So I was like, I think I might have to have a discussion with this woman. And then I was seeing that she's also big into sacred geometry and tarot, and I was like, oh, I'm sold now. So today I do, like I said before, I have Megan from 7 Degrees of Wisdom. Megan, I know you don't have your own show, but would you like to plug any like social media accounts or anything that you have that people can find your stuff on?
Yeah, I just, I don't have my own show, but I'm 7 Degrees of Wisdom on Instagram and Megan Allen on Facebook, and it's 7 Degrees of Wisdom spelled out. So Facebook wouldn't let me use the number 7, but on my Instagram it's the number 7 and then Degrees of Wisdom. There's no dashes, no dots, no letters, numbers, anything like that. So there's a lot of people that are copying me. You know how you have those. I've had dealt with it so much, it's ridiculous. But that's how you get a hold of me. See my page, check it out.
Now that Facebook, is that an actual? Is it like a page or is it like a like an actual person account?
No, I kind of they wouldn't let me do it like the way I wanted to do it.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, I had used my name and then in like parentheses it's spelled out 7 Degrees of Wisdom, but my name's Megan Allen.
I was trying to make it an Occult Rejects Facebook page a while ago, and like it wouldn't accept anything that didn't sound like a person's name.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? And then it was like, but in order, like now, if I wanted to make like a page for the podcast, I had to have another account to make the page. I'm like, what the fuck? So I made up like John Ocular. Just like a stupid name for the Facebook account, and then I could make the Occult Rejects page from that. I was like, this is so silly.
Yeah, it is. It's annoying, but yeah, that's how people can check me out. I do tarot readings, and I teach classes. I teach tarot classes, all that stuff, and I can do that stuff online if anybody's interested, because I'm local to the Fort Smith, Arkansas area. That's where I read at 2 shops there.
Yeah, I saw you promoting that. Cool
yeah,
stuff.
And I read there, and then I teach classes, all kinds of different classes, sacred geometry, manifesting. I did one on the paranormal recently.
I saw that too. I was like, oh, she's into paranormal too. This could be fun.
Yeah, I'm a paranormal investigator too.
Doesn't it seem like both almost go together in a sense?
Yeah, they really, really do. And so, like, my story goes back for like pretty far. So, since I've been a kid, I've seen things, felt things, heard things. Everybody in my family kind of has abilities from varying degrees, and so I remember being little and like thinking about how I could make potions and stuff, and so it was like, I know it sounds a little cheesy, but it's like when I was little, that's what I would do. I would like go outside and combine all these things, and I was like super into it back then. And so my family wasn't religious at all. They didn't push that stuff. I didn't have to deconstruct. I didn't have to go through any of that stuff, right? Because my family's always been super into this stuff. My grandfather was a Rosicrucian, and so my dad.
Oh wow, was he?
Yeah, he was. He died a month before I was born, but my dad would always talk about him and stuff. My family would always talk about the stuff that he would do and things like that. So
do you have, was there any like, not to get off on this for too much, but
yeah,
was there like any like kind of, I guess like heirlooms, you'd call it, like things that was left behind that people saved that may have came from the Rosicrucians or anything like that?
I asked, and nobody seems to know if even he has like, any books or anything like that.
Was there any other family members? Like, was your father?
No, my father wasn't.
Okay.
But my father was, he was very into this stuff, and we constantly talked about it. He was kind of in and out of my life for a while because my parents got divorced when I was 7. But when we did talk, it was always about the paranormal, who was running the world, what was really going on, like, all that stuff. That's what we sat around the table and talked about. So it was...
He's definitely ahead of his time, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's what we would do. We would just sit around and talk about all this stuff. And so I've always been into this stuff. And of course, when I was a teenager, you do the whole Wiccan thing. And then it turned into Buddhism. And usually occultists will start out with like Buddhism. I find that a lot. And then, it's like a combo of like Wicca, elemental magic, and then...
well, you get like, Buddhism. I think Anton LaVey's daughter kind of did it like that too. She went from Satanism to Buddhism.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, that always seems like a natural transition for some reason. I don't know. I guess it's because, the meditation and all that stuff. And so
I've often wondered, like, did you get so freaked out that you went all the way the other way to something a little bit more easier? I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
From Satanism to that, that's a jump, man.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you. Just I happen to think about that because I always thought that was funny how she went from one thing straight over to something like completely different. I was like, okay, what happened there?
Yeah, it reminds me of like Dion Fortune, how she did that. Like, just went spiritual to complete like extremist Christian fundamentalist all of a sudden and denounced everything that she did. It was crazy. That's what that kind of reminds me of.
Oh wow, yeah. Honestly, I kind of forget that even happened with her.
Yeah.
And I've read a bunch of her stuff too, and I totally forgot.
Yeah. Yep. That was strange to me. How she just completely denounced it all. It's probably she probably did that for financial reasons. So
that's what I was thinking too. But I was like, I don't know if I want to get into that. But I was even thinking, I was like, financially, that might have been a good move for her.
Yeah, that's probably what happened. So I'm 41. Okay. So when I was, I was born in 81. So during my teenage years in the 90s, it was all about Wicca, and then, progressive. Then for a while, I kind of dropped off of all of it. And then probably like the last 5 years, I got super into what I'm doing now because I've been a fan of Damien Eccles for a really long time. And so where it really started was like Alan Watts.
Oh, okay.
So I was listening to him, and I ended up working with this guy at this old job, and he was a complete conspiracy theorist, and we would have these long like conversations. And at that same time, I was listening to Alan Watts a lot. And then when you start watching that stuff, then the other stuff pops up, and then I ended up catching something that Damien did, and then I looked at his channel and I just read, like, I watched everything over and over and over again, and then it just kind of morphed into this Kabbalah quest. And then from there, the tarot came with that, because tarot is an integral part of the Kabbalah.
Oh, can you say that one more time, please?
So tarot is Tarot is an integral part of Kabbalah.
Yes.
It has a lot to do with it.
My opinion is it is an art version of what the Tree of Life is showing you.
Yes, exactly. Like, you can line up the 22 paths with all the major arcana.
Yes.
And then with the Sephiro, and then the correspondences of the angels and the elements and the planets and all that stuff. So it's all one big thing. There's a lot of like things that go off from it here and there, but
not to interrupt you, but have you ever came across that website Labyrinthos or something like that?
Yes, I use it all the time.
Yes, I was gonna say I assumed you probably did, but I just wanted to ask for the listeners. What she's saying, I 100% agree, and I'm sure you've heard me countless of times show tarot with the Tree of Life. that website, Labyrinthos, so however you say it, I'm just,
Yeah.
I think it's great. I'll leave the link in the bottom. I really do think like you should check that out if people want to see how I think the tarot does line up with the Tree of Life. That's a great, great beginner site.
In my tarot class, that's one of the one of the recommended websites that I put in there that I give everybody is that. And then of course, you know, Damien Eccles, Tarot 101, Major Arcana 1 and 2. And so those videos like really kicked it off for me. I'd always been into the tarot and I didn't like dive deep into it until, so I came across, I call her my mentor. So there's the shops that I read at, I would just go in there and like buy stuff. And then I found out one day that she was teaching a tarot class. And that was when it like peaked for me. Like I was all into the Kabbalah and all that stuff. And so I was like, I need to research this tarot thing more. And so I got super deep into it. And I showed up at her class and she was like, she couldn't believe the things I was saying about the cards. Like she just would look at me and go, what? Like, you know, in the world card, there's the four Lamasu and all that stuff, you know, the eagle, the man, the lion, and the bull. And I was talking about that and she just like cut over to me and she was like, whoa, well, when after the class was over, she was like, hey, do you want to like start studying together? Because you know a lot of stuff about tarot that not everybody knows. You want to like come hang out? I was like, hell yeah.
Come hang.
So me and her started studying together and we were even going to create our own tarot deck. And we started working on that. And then, so she got me a job at the shop that she reads at. She's been reading tarot for 30 years. She's also like a licensed therapist. And so she kind of guided me down the path like that I'm on now as far as, you know, my business and everything. And so she's the only one that I can go super deep with, but she's deconstructed Christian. So she still has a lot of those beliefs and everything kind of still ingrained in her, even though she's really spiritual and she's kind of leaning towards that. She tells me all the time, you're too deep for me. You scare me.
I've had people say, even people in the OTO that I was kind of cool with, even after I left and after I had certain experiences, there was things I was trying to tell them or things I was trying to show them with symbolism, and they were like, I don't even want to contemplate this shit because if it's real, it's a little fucking freaky.
Yeah.
So I get what you're saying.
Yeah. And so she does like past life regression. She also does numerology. It's like her number one thing. She's even invented her own method of doing numerology charts, which is scarily accurate. Like she developed her own method of doing it, and she did my chart, and she uses my chart to show everybody like how it lines out. She always uses mine as an example, and so it's scarily accurate.
Real quick,
like,
I just want to ask, I know you had mentioned you know, people I guess influencing you, and that probably is what got you into the Kabbalah. What was it that actually got you thinking that the tarot lines up with the Kabbalah? You know, so like where not every, like even people I know who are into magic who are into Kabbalah, some will still say they don't agree with that, which I don't know. Whatever, that is what it is. Yeah, but like, so how did you come across that?
You know, everybody's entitled to thing. It's just that when you go down this path and you go deep enough, you start to realize that it's all connected. And that it kind of comes like full circle for you. And so it was just a natural progression for me because I started reading all these books, you know, the Kabbalistic Tree of Life and you know, all this stuff that has to do with it and how it lines up. And even just researching, you come across it. It just, there's no getting around it. You eventually come across it when you go down this path, when you start learning.
Did you read Dion Fortune's Mystical Kabbalah?
I have not read that one.
Not bad. It's a little dry, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good. I'm gonna definitely. I've got so many books that I bought that, you know, I've read most of them, but there's some of them that I haven't read, but I constantly use them as reference, like when I'm teaching classes and stuff like that.
Do you have?
But
Did you ever come across? I'm probably gonna screw it up. I don't know if I remember if his name is Jordan Knight or Jordan McKnight.
no, not yet.
I'll have to send you. I can send you the PDF for free. But that one goes into it does the spheres and then it does the paths too, which I've never come across a book that did both that in depth. I mean, it's like it's a huge book. You might enjoy that.
I definitely would. Yeah. So when I'm just like researching, I came across pictures, stuff like that, where it had those on there, like the paths and then the tarot cards, how they lined up with everything. And I was like, well, what is this? And just so I started going even deeper and deeper and deeper. And now it's like, I even had this weird moment yesterday. I was at my uncle's house and he's a preacher and he doesn't like what I do. We'll just say that.
I'd assume so.
And so, but he still respects me, and everything. And we had conversations and stuff like that. And I was driving home and I started thinking, and I even had a little bit of a deconstruction moment about my own spirituality and my own, the things that I believe. And I'm sitting here going, holy shit. When you have those moments where things just kind of click.
Oh yeah.
And then
those are magical moments.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, holy shit. This stuff is just another form of like, belief system that people subscribe to. And I just had like this mind blowing thing that happened to me yesterday. And it was pretty cool. I love moments like that when, you go down this path where it's never enough. You have to keep searching. The answers aren't ever there. And then all of a sudden you just out of nowhere get answers that you've been seeking for a while. And it's like kind of cool when that happens. And when you practice magic and you do the invocations and the meditation work, the energy work, it's just amazing the stuff that just happens to you.
Have you ever had, and I've mentioned this plenty of times on my show for like, I guess I hate using the phrase download or the word downloads, but there's been times I guess like when I've had magical experiences where it's like I'll get like a fluttering of all these ideas or visions in my head, and then it's like sometimes like neither then or later on in the day or whatever, could even be a week later, all of a sudden like I'll have all these different ideas, and it's almost like the visualization of a picture or whatever or symbols, and it's like somehow all of a sudden they all string together, and I'm like, holy fuck, how did I never fucking realize that before? And then when you have like all those things kind of hit you at once, for me, this is the difference between a belief and knowing. Because of my experience and understanding things differently now, I understand and know how all this shit makes sense. Instead of like you were saying before, you're always kind of like looking because you're like, this isn't enough, this isn't an answer. And every once in a while, you almost get one of those, and it's like fucking profound.
Yeah. Yeah, I had that happen to me yesterday. And so, yeah, it's fucking crazy. Like that shit, I've had big moments where that's happened to me. So when something's truth to me, I get full body chills.
Yo, I've even said before, it is literally as if like when your mind once figures it out, it sends this vibration throughout your whole body. That like you even have like a physical feeling of like, I don't know if it's enlightenment, whatever, but it's almost like you feel something throughout your whole body and you're like, oh man.
That reminds me, like one time I was driving and all of a sudden I was at a fucking stoplight and all of a sudden everything got super bright. And I felt fucking one with everything for a brief second. And it sucks because those moments are so fleeting and you want to stay in them. Yeah. And it's like everything just kind of evens out and like nothing's wrong. It's just you all of a sudden just understand what the fuck is really going on. And you can't explain it to somebody that hasn't had that experience. They don't fully understand it.
I don't think it's possible to explain it.
Yeah, it's like you were saying, it's like all these symbols and all these ideas and everything comes through. I call them downloads. So when you practice, you get those. And the synchronicity, for me, I see synchronicities like fucking crazy for weeks. And then all of a sudden, like yesterday, so, the repeating numbers and all that stuff. So I'm always looking at numbers, adding them up together, reducing them, and then using them. Like license plates or numbers I see. Or
yo, I do that with license plates all the time. All the time.
Yeah, Yeah.
Especially on the news. I'm like, oh, there's a license plate. Let me try to figure that out. Maybe it's telling me what's going on. Crazy stuff like that. I do that. Bus numbers, all sorts of shit.
I thought I was the only one that did that.
Oh, I do.
I'm obsessed about it. So my home address reduces to a 4. And we all know what 4 is: stability, foundations, stuff like that, right? So
I just had somebody on go on about the number 4 recently. Interesting you brought that up just last week, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been seeing 222s a lot lately.
Have you noticed the 369?
Yes.
I've been seeing that a lot. I mean, that was peppered all over the Nashville shooting. I hate to say it, but
yeah.
But I have been noticing that a lot recently.
There's a lot of shit going on right now, and I think it's because I don't know if you're into astrology or anything like that, but there's a lot going on astrologically that's unprecedented, that hasn't happened in thousands of years.
A few times that's happened, I think, in the last year or two. Stuff with astrology. It's been like the first time in so long.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten sucked up into that because I have seen it and I have paid attention to it, but it's just like sometimes with that shit, I don't know, that could take up too much time in my head.
Yeah, no, I get it, but
and then I'll get no podcast done. Or I'll spend 2 weeks looking at that shit and putting out one show on it, and people are gonna be like, "Oh, this dude's crazy."
I know. Like the shop that I work at, there's a girl that works there, and she's a master herbalist. She has a doctorate degree, and she's like a chaplain, and she's an astrologer. And so whenever shit like this happens, she will like post all this stuff. She'll make printouts for the shop and we'll all read it. And it's like, I'm like, holy shit. Like this last month was really bad. And see, I'm empathic. And so I feel, I hate even using that fucking word because it sounds so cheesy and everybody fucking, oh, I'm an empath too.
Oh.
No, it's not like that. I honestly do have abilities. And so I feel all this shit on an energetic level, and especially if you're doing magic, you feel it at an amplified fucking level.
I was going to say, I think if you're really, even magic, I would even say just if somebody was just working on themselves to be a better person, I think you'll actually start to become a little bit that yourself because you just start to pick up people who don't vibe with you.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. Not even to make it sound like you were saying, everybody jumps to say like, oh, I'm an empath or I'm this or that.
Yeah.
I think just people fucking with magic and trying to make themselves a better person can slightly become that themselves anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I've here recently, everything's been amped up for me. So I've always had the ability to like read energy in the room and see it and feel it and everything. And so, but here lately, it's like really fucking amped up. Like, and I think it's got a lot to do with what's going on astrologically.
I was even saying that, I was saying that especially with like the Nashville shooting because I'm not one of those people that just says, oh, everything is fake. I do believe stuff does, people are actually shot and killed. I don't know if there's like some underlying, whatever is behind it, but even just with like the numbers and stuff that I've been seeing a lot lately going along with the same type of, I guess, event. I was even wondering, like, is this just like kind of like, as crazy as it sounds, like an energy code from like what's going on somewhere else, just replicating itself in society, or the energy comes in and this is what it does to humans? I don't,
I think that's what's going on. There is a pattern to everything. Look, like with the sacred geometry even and all the numbers.
I was going to bring that up after this because I figure that works in pretty well.
Yeah. So it's all linked. Everything is patterns. When you start recognizing that everything has patterns to it, then everything starts making sense. Like sacred geometry is the building blocks of our reality as we know it, right? You can even use sacred geometry, the patterns and everything, and I combine them with my magic as well. And so it's in the natural world. It's what makes up the fabric of time and space. I mean, for example, so say you're doing magic and you start to perceive angelic beings, right? So they will show themselves sometimes to you as a geometric shape.
I've heard that a lot.
Yeah.
I've heard that a lot,
So,
and I've actually seen like geometric shapes before, like with my eyes closed, like pretty vividly.
yeah. I see them pretty often too when I get deep into meditation.
Yes, yeah. It's almost like it's I think they're coming towards you and like for me, and changing. Yeah. It's almost like a tunnel of like these geometric shapes that just keep going.
Yes.
Until I go somewhere else.
No. That's exactly what happens to me too. And so when you start studying this stuff and getting into the occult, all this stuff is like all tied in, guys. So it's like numerology, astrology, sacred geometry, tarot, high magic, ceremonial magic. Then you start going down that rabbit hole. Then you get into the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and then you know all the Theosophical Society, all this stuff. You can't study of the occult without seeing all of that kind of play out in front of you. And the problem is for me is like I'll go down these rabbit holes of certain things, but I'm interested in all of it. I want all of it, you know.
Yeah, and I'll even say this, and it's probably some people may not like my opinion about it, but when it comes to even certain stuff with magic, it's like I understand some things like the Goetia. I never had a use for it. For me. But I have read it. I have looked into it. I have studied some of the things because I need to understand what it is because it exists. Doesn't mean I'm going to use it. And then sometimes when you do understand that stuff, you'll see it spread out somewhere else. And then that could make that other thing make more sense to you now. So it's like I feel like sometimes you don't have to agree with it and practice it. But sometimes a little bit of knowledge, instead of just saying, oh, that's horrible and satanic, you can't look at it. No, maybe you need to understand it a little bit, so then you do actually understand why you don't agree with it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like, I know exactly what you're saying. So you can't have dark without the light. One can't exist without the other. So yeah, you might not be into that, but it's only going to make you grow and have you completely understand things on a more profound level. If you just accept it, doesn't mean you have to do it, but you've got to kind of check it out, see what you think about it, because it definitely has an effect on your beliefs down the line and what you find is right for you. You can't just half-ass it, okay? Especially in magic. You can't half-ass anything because you're only doing yourself a disservice when you do that and you don't accept certain aspects of different things. You're just cutting yourself off from figuring things out faster when you kind of aren't willing to go there. You have to experience that on a different level because it's like you don't really want to grow because you're stunting your growth because you don't want to even acknowledge something that it might exist.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
It doesn't make sense logically to do that aside from the occult period.
And you know what? And you know what I think happens too? Maybe because like I think as like, people, and I'm not like patting myself on the back saying I'm any better than anybody else. If anything, maybe I'm worse because I'm aware and still do stupid shit. But like, like when you start working on yourself, and for me, like I understood at some point that I just know how for most part, I think it's how all humans work. But there is a thing with my brain that if I don't understand something, it will lie to me to preserve my ego and to make sense of something that I just don't understand. So my brain will lie to me on its own. And I think at some point when you start to realize that shit, maybe you'll start looking at stuff because you're like, well, maybe what my brain told me the first time isn't fully correct or isn't that deep. You understand what I'm getting at? It's like I think after you start realizing that you will push shit away out of fear because you actually don't understand, sometimes you might actually want to understand it. As silly as that sounds.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. When you start working on yourself and you start changing things, the deconstruction that happens is scary as hell. And some people freak the fuck out over that, and they're like, oh, fuck that. I'm no way, man. And so, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Like, your ego wants to take over because it doesn't like that. Hey, we want things the old way. We don't want things the new way. This is uncomfortable. We don't know this. So your ego kind of takes over, and you know, it will lie to you. It'll tell you that shit. I know exactly what you're talking about because it wants to get back to that comfort zone. So when you're doing the work and you start to change that ego mindset, your ego's like, fuck you. No, we're not. We're not doing this. And so, yeah, it kind of, it give you fucking hiccups along the way and all that shit. So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And just to get back to the sacred geometry again, because we're talking about that. I you mentioned the angels. I have often wondered, and I have kind of like said it before, kind of jokingly and sometimes serious. I do wonder though, like if angels and angles are really much more of like almost the same thing in a sense. Like if angels are just angles of reflections of light, really, to a sense.
Yes, sir. I would subscribe.
I think that a lot, actually, and some people I think take me as joking, and I'm like being serious.
No, you're not joking. That's
so
for real.
So like, if could you maybe just what made you come across that idea, that thought, or is it like more of an experience?
It's it's more of an experience. So I mean,
I think for me, the reason why I started thinking that is because what I was saying before, a lot of times before I would have these things, I guess I would deem as magical experiences. I don't know if it's astral projection, actually literally going into the abyss or whatever. I would have these experiences, and there was a commonality in like what I would see with my eyes closed. And I would get the spirals a lot, and then I would start to get like these geometrical shapes. And when I started seeing that over and over again, I'm like, are these the angles or angels they speak of?
Yeah. I mean, they're one and the same. You think about our language and how it was formed over time, right? And how different words meant different things back then. So yeah, of course.
And like like if you think about it, it's just like, if you want to, I guess how most people will look at an angel, they're a spirit. So I mean, it's not in the flesh. So all it is just light anyway. Yeah, so I started thinking and everything here is built up of just reflections of light. I'm like, I don't know. I started thinking angels, angles. It's really not that much different.
No, they're not. You're right. Like I've experienced it as one and the same as well. So I mean, it's either word you give it, it is what it is.
And then look at the orphanim.
Come across it in different ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and if you even look at like how the orphanim is so supposedly looks like, I'm like, that's just a circular geometrical shape going on in itself.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just started thinking that stuff, and
no, I agree with you totally.
So now you were saying before, even with geometry, I do think that like really, and I hate to push like this matrix idea, but for me, I do think that like really this reality that we're perceiving really all just boils down to geometry and math, really, and numbers. So
when you study sacred geometry, you figure that out. That becomes very apparent to you that this matrix is made up of numbers and shapes and light codes. It's all, it all goes together. So the shapes in sacred geometry, they all have correspondences. You have your 5 platonic solids as well. And so those represent earth, air, fire, and water. And when you start doing, I watched this show. It's on the Freaking Guide channel. And it was a series of 17 episode series on sacred geometry. And he was going about showing how you can use the patterns of sacred geometry and the tree of life to do certain meditations to, create more connections in your energetic field with your chakras. And I'm like watching this, I'm like, holy shit. Like this stuff is really making a lot of sense to me now. And, just even though like my favorite shape, the necklace I have on is the Merkaba. So the Merkaba is called like the chariot of God. It's like, they say it's the shape of our DNA. It's the shape of our spiritual vehicle when we come to this earth. And if you think about it, it's 2 inverted triangles, one on top of each other. Mm-hmm. So you have Metatron's cube, right? Well, a Merkaba is a 3D version of Metatron's cube. So if you were to pull that shape out from 2D, you get the Merkaba. So if you think about it, the body will fit in the Merkaba. So if you have a giant one and then you had your arms out, it's a lot like the pentacle, right? Mm-hmm. So that shape, you can use that shape, and I've incorporated that shape in my invocations and my meditations. And since been doing that, I get more downloads from this shape because of what it represents and what it means of information. Like, it gave me a new way to invoke the angelic beings when I'm doing my stuff. And I was like, whoa, that's interesting. That gave me like a different way of doing it. And so there is some validity to this stuff, the shapes, the angles, the numbers, the patterns. I mean, it's everywhere. So I also believe that sacred geometry has a lot to do with our biological body, how it's made up, and then our energetic and chakra systems. When you connect it, I mean, just doing, like, say, for example, you picture orb here on top of your head, one on the right, one on the left, and you just make a triangle. Well, you're connecting. If you take it and cut it, okay, so you're just making a triangle out of the first half. Well, that's the first half of the tree of life, right? Okay, so then you just keep going down, even, your arms and all the way through your hips and your feet, and you connect these energy centers with these sacred geometric shapes. You get different types of energetic flow that happens. And so for me, it created these synapses to fire differently. And so it helped me kind of understand what the underlying energetic field, or the matrix, if you will, that we live in. And everything is perspective and subjective, right? So everybody's reality is made up of this basic geometric shapes. And so once you tap into that, you start to make connections that you wouldn't have before if you didn't use these shapes, right? I use them a lot with crystal grids, because I still do like crystal grids and stuff like that, and I set an intention for them, and then I'll get the crystals I want for them, and I'll set them up in sacred geometric shapes, and I'll just leave them laying around the house until I feel like I need to tear them down and redo them. But they're like little energy pockets for me to pull from, right? So these shapes that you use, there's something about them, the way they connect, when you put crystals on them and use them in your practice, there's something that just clicks, and I can't even explain it. It's almost like you start understanding the fabric of time when you start working with these shapes and using them in your meditations and your energy work. That is unprecedented for me. So it's like God's language, I guess, is the only way that I can explain it.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying for sure. Yeah.
And so when you start tapping into those shapes, I'm telling you, man, you start working with them and you start doing things with them. I mean, things just kind of come together in a different way. And then it's like you see behind the veil's veil, if you will. You
saw peeking behind the curtain.
You peek behind the curtain's fucking curtain.
Yeah.
You know
what I was thinking while you were talking about this is that talking about like these crystal grids. I mean, I would all those crystals, I would assume, like, with light again, going back to energy and light, like they almost absorb and then like reflect. So it's like in those grids, could all those crystals actually be kind of like bouncing off of each other too, in a sense?
Yeah, they work together with each other, especially if you use them in certain patterns. And I intuitively know which ones to put where. I don't know how, but I do. And then they will just create these little vortexes, pockets of energy that I can pull from. I'll even walk by them, like through the house, and I can kind of feel that little bit of a pull or a buzz when I walk by them.
Oh,
I know it probably sounds crazy, but I don't know. People probably would think that's crazy, but I'm just saying, I'm just speaking from my own personal experience. So crystals, there are some crystals that absorb energy, and there's some that
project it.
that absorb it and put it out. Like clear quartz crystals was pretty much the most common one that can receive and put out energy. So those are the best ones to use, like when you're doing that stuff. And then there's different ones. But yeah, crystals do have an energetic field. They are inanimate objects. I understand a lot of people think of them that way, but when you start working with them, like I incorporate them as well in my magic. You pick certain ones like right now, I'm super into Pray Night. And so Pray Night connects you to the etheric world. It kind of opens the gate a little bit. And so I'll also use that in my meditations. I also do yoga, so I'll incorporate all that stuff. But yeah, so that's just a little bit on crystals. I'm not going to get super into that. That's kind of
now going back into like sacred geometry, I would also then think like depending on the cuts of the crystals.
Yes.
That could change everything also.
Yep. So say you have like, I've got one in my hand right here that I hold on to. So this one's like double terminated, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So it can receive and put out energy. But say this end was cut off and you wanted the energy to go outward, you would point the crystals outward, or if you wanted them to go inward, you would point them inward towards one crystal that may be a tower, right? And then it'll send the energy out that way. When I read my setup, I have crystal grids that I use. I use the Flower of Life and I use Metatron's Cube. And I will put crystals on them and use them during my reading so that I can pull more energy from them and direct it where I need it to go so that I can help the client. They don't realize I'm doing that, but that's basically, what I'm doing. But yeah, I'm telling you, the sacred geometry, guys, it's something that you need to look into. And if you're not incorporating it in your practice, I would definitely try it, and you'd be blown away at what starts happening when you start studying it, delving deeper, and using it in your practice and even in your meditations. I use it in my meditations. So if you focus on the shape that you're like, especially the Metatron's Cube, because the Metatron's Cube has everything in it. Every photonic solid will fit into it. I wish I had.
And just real quick, I do want to mention, when it comes to the Kabbalah, Metatron would be like the angel on Kether prior to, like, I guess, God himself.
Yes.
Or itself, however you perceive God. Metatron would be like, I guess, the final guy beforehand.
Yeah.
So that's very high up there.
Let me grab mine real quick.
Sure, not a problem.
Okay. So, Flower of Life, right? Okay. This is Metatron's Cube. Okay. So, Metatron's Cube, the shape is actually, I want to show like this is a big version so that people can kind of see it. Okay. I don't know how well you guys can see this, right? What I have on my neck. So this is a big version of it. This is the guy I use when I meditate. He's made out of selenite, right? So, this right here is this. Okay, this is a 2D version. This is a 3D version, right? This shape fits into this shape. And there's like a whole bunch of different shapes that fit into this shape. So it all goes together. So this is just different perspectives of all these different shapes, and they're all combined.
So fucking wild shit. You know what's weird with that thing that you had, that crystal that you were holding?
If I can, watch, if I can spin this in the right direction. See how it all lines up?
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
And so all these, and the 5 platonic solids are also in here too. And if you really need to check this out, because you can break this down, you can get pictures of this broken down into all the shapes that make it up. And then you're like, holy shit. And then you start seeing them everywhere, like around you in nature. You start seeing them everywhere.
Have you noticed, because I know you did mention sacred geometry in the Kabbalah. That really piqued my interest. Have you noticed that, like, I'm wondering, like, if that symbol is like for Metatron at the top, would all the other symbols coming down the tree somehow maybe make that one at the top as well? You understand what I'm getting at?
Yes. Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes. I think that's why they call it that. Because if think about this, okay, so they call the Merkaba, right? The Merkaba is the chariot of God. Well, they say Metatron is right there before the throne of God, right? Like he's the one that you talk to before you talk to God. Like he's the middleman, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah. Yeah.
That was even kind of another thing, honestly, not to sound like, you know, whatever.
No,
But
no,
I have even wondered, like, you know, all those shapes and shit that I see before, like, the fucking... I see an eclipse, and then it just fully turns to white, and then I'm somewhere else. I'll see all those shapes prior, and I was kind of thinking, was that all the shape, you know, was that Metatron prior to coming face to face with God?
I think what was happening was that you were seeing all that shit on the way to where you were supposed to go.
Yeah.
So that's like the fabric that's made up.
Well, like the code of it, too.
When you said that, I pictured a tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's
like
exactly what it is, yeah.
Yeah, I pictured like a tunnel and all the shapes. Like, and the tunnel is made up of matter, I guess plasma. Whenever you said that, that's what it made me think of. So I pictured all the shapes as you were going through like this tunnel to get to this spot where I pictured it like being open when you said that.
Yeah.
And it's like...
It's kind of basically what happens, though. It's almost like going down, it's like almost heading down towards the end of a tunnel, and then the light starts to get brighter, and then, you know, the eclipse like kind of fills up, actually, and then it's like, poof, I'm somewhere else. But like, I never thought, like, maybe that was like, maybe that was me phoning home, or phoning to wherever I was going. I was like typing in the code. Maybe all those geometric shapes are the shit of like where you're going. I don't know. Maybe it's different every time.
It makes up everything. And so it's actually like a fabric that makes up reality. And so yeah, when we start practicing and going in that direction, it's like, yeah, that shit becomes very apparent. And that's why we're flooded with it in our field of vision, our third eye vision, not our eye vision.
Yes.
Right. I think because that's on the fucking way to the abyss. That's on the way. Like, you know,
that's what I used to say. Yeah.
You got Kether, and then you got the Ein Sof and the Ein Sof R, and then you got to get to the abyss. So, I mean, I've even heard Damien talk about witnessing the procession of the equinoxes. I mean, how fucking cool would that be? Oof. You know, you're doing magic and you see that in fucking reverse. I mean, so yeah, it's all real connected. I think sacred geometry is just literally the fabric of everything.
See, I've even gone back and thought like the orphonym, the idea of the orphonym has something to do with the fucking geometry that I've seen. Yeah. Also, and it just seems very weird how you start getting into a lot of like circular geometry, you know, stuff like that, shapes and stuff like that, especially as you start going up the tree of life, in my opinion. Yes. You start to see how like a lot of that stuff kind of matches almost visualizations if you just think outside the box. Yeah. If you look at what you're seeing,
when you said that, I pictured the Ouroboros, right?
Yes. And sometimes I think like if you kind of like almost just, especially with tarot sometimes and the Kabbalah, if you kind of like just look at like the symbol or the art and remove what the story is you think and just look at the shapes and just look at what's being drawn, sometimes you'll start to see that in other places or like things that I've seen with my eyes closed, and I'm like, okay. Yeah. Kind of almost makes sense now.
Yeah, it's all part of everything. Imagine if we could really see everything that was going on with our own physical eyes. So we have to practice magic to see it on a level that we can understand, which is not rooted in this dimension. It's rooted in another dimension above us, right? So my theory is the next dimension over the fourth dimension is where we see those shapes and all that stuff. So I've spontaneously astral projected my whole life. I have sleep paralysis, night terrors, all that stuff. And so I've had several OBEs. And when you come out, have you ever had an OBE?
You know what? There's been a few times I'm almost positive that's what it was.
So
there's been times where like I've seen myself and then like kind of like drifted somewhere else and then came back.
Yeah.
But and you know it was weird. A lot of those times there's been a few times, but most of them I've been sick too.
Yeah.
horribly sick, and I just thought it was a really weird experience. But then it happened to me again one time when like I wasn't sick and I was sober. So I was like, okay, that just wasn't like a weird sick hallucination. It wasn't hallucinating.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's like it's a real thing. So whenever you're under amounts of like high stress, it will that's what it does for me. It spontaneously throws me into like, OBEs and sleep paralysis and night terrors when I get super stressed out. And then like here recently I had night terrors 3 nights in a row, which is fucking weird to me. I don't even know if you want me to even like talk about what I seen, but that shit was fucked.
Oh no, I'm thinking another episode for your OBEs and your night terrors would be really interesting.
Yeah. So I remember being a kid and having sleep paralysis, and you know how they talk about the sleep paralysis demon. That shit's fucking right there. You see it. Like, you see it. Yeah, we get to talk about that.
I've had a lot of listeners actually hit me up with stuff like that.
Yeah.
With like having like demonic sleep paralysis experiences.
Yeah.
So I'll probably definitely have you back on for that, because at least I know people will understand where you're coming from, probably, because I've had a lot of people actually hit me up with that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't even know what to tell you. I've never experienced it.
Yeah. No, it's scary. It's scary as hell. So I sleep talk and sleepwalk, and apparently that stuff it's called parasomnia. And so like my daughter's a sleepwalker too. And I gave her my abilities too. So I think people say that there's like a medical reason for it, but I know that it's a paranormal thing from personal experience.
Mm.
And so, but what I started to say was like, so when you come out of your body, there's this realm that you see, and it's almost like misty. And the only thing that's illuminated is like what's right in front of you, right? Until you move your energetic body, your astral body. And so it looks like a really foggy day, guys. Like when it's night outside and say you're driving down the road, that's what it looks like when you pop out of your body. And there's this incredibly hard buzzing feeling and sound. And sometimes you'll even hear like this high pitched ring. And your body just, bzzz, it's like it's vibrating so hard, and then pop, and you come right out of your body. And like I was looking down, and I was like, I wonder what would happen if I touched myself, and I just got sucked right back in. So that stuff's been happening to me for like my whole life,
That's bugged out.
So yeah, and it's kind of freaky if you don't know what's going on, like when it first starts happening. But now I'm so used to it that I don't resist it anymore. And I found that if I don't resist it, then it doesn't last as long. And it won't. Yeah. So you just gotta let go and just let it fucking happen and watch it happen.
Oh yeah, well I was thinking that before, like even times with magical experiences, I think the fear or questioning the experience itself is neither going to ruin it or end it.
No. No, just I've just learned to just fucking let go.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Just let it happen. Yeah.
And just let it happen, because the more you fight it, the worse it's gonna be. Again,
your brain's gonna be like, I'm not sure what's going on.
Yeah.
And it's gonna try to tell you stop.
Yeah, it's fucking scary. Like I've seen some fucking scary shit when that stuff has happened to me, and
there's been times where I've had experiences and seen shit when I'm like, I just really hope that wasn't the future I was looking at, because it was not a nice place to be.
Yeah, no, yeah, you'll have those moments too where,
you're like, I hope I'm dead and gone by the time that happens, or the planet looks like that.
Yeah, hope we won't be around when that.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, thank God I don't have kids.
Yeah, it's crazy how the human mind works, and what starts to happen when you start figuring it out, how it works, and how everything is just tied together, and it's all one. I just have moments of like full circle moments. When you start to make strides, and it's fucking really cool, but you also experience some fucking scary shit when that happens too, and it's crazy. I know what you're talking
sometimes
about.
long belief systems that I had for 20, 30 years sometimes get shattered because of shit like that.
Yep. Just fucking disappear.
That could be rough.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, who the fuck am I now?
That's why I joke around and I'm like, yo, whenever you see people talking about having those 5D experiences on Instagram and they post up a meme of like Kermit the Frog dancing around, I'm like, no, that's not like.
No.
When you have an experience that's profound, like you're gonna be rocked to the core for a little bit.
Yeah.
That might be a week later, but not the day of.
Yeah. So for me, it throws me into what they fucking call now is like a dark night of the soul.
Oh yeah.
Like it'll fucking throw me into this deep depression for like a week, and I will be like just fucking have way too much fire and balance in me, and I'll get like low, and then it.
You know what's funny? Sometimes I think that is since you understand the Kabbalah, I guess I could bring it up and you might get it. With the third sphere, Binah, one of the experiences is sorrow, and the vice is faith, which I find that interesting. So when you actually have an experience and you know something, is realizing that you've been believing a lie, the sorrow you're going to experience after the fact.
Yes. Isn't that fucking weird how that happens?
Yeah.
And like all of a sudden you're like, fucking nobody wants to be around your fucking ass and you don't even want to fucking get out of bed because who the fuck are you now? Like what the fuck happened? And then you're like, okay, and then you fucking come out of it and then you just go on down the next fucking road.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And it happens to you multiple times. It's happened to me multiple times in my life.
Oh yeah, same here.
Like a couple months ago I was that way. Like, I was just, what the fuck am I doing? Like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, this shit.
I've thought that plenty of times. Even with my own show. I was just like, fuck am I doing this for anymore?
Like, yeah. So you have those moments, guys, like when you're practicing and things starts getting, you start evaluating and deconstructing and then you're like, fucking hell. But when you come out of it, you understand it on a more deeper level than you would if you hadn't had that happen to you. So it's a good thing. You can't be love and fucking light all the time. It doesn't work. Okay? You're lying to yourself if you think you need to be fucking happy all the time. You don't. It doesn't work that way. That's not how life works. You're going to have those up and downs. You're going to have those fucking moments where you fucking hate everybody and you want to kill everybody in fucking, 20-foot radius of you. It's all part of the show. It's all part of the practice. It's all, that's just, it comes with it. So it I see these people on this spiritual fucking bandwagon and they're like, oh, be so nice and love everybody. That's not realistic.
No, you're right.
It's not fucking realistic. So yeah, man, you start doing this shit, you'll have
ups and downs for sure. And you know what I even noticed, and then after this, I do want to try to just get back to a couple of things with the geometry. Yeah. Even for myself, sometimes some of these like experiences that I've had, I still think what made it the worst, even like mentally and physically on myself, when I've had some of these more profound things, is almost the fact that I think I noticed after the fact, it was my unwillingness almost to accept what I just learned is what prolonged the horrors of knowing it, in a sense.
Yes.
After the fact, when you're like, you know what, I'm okay with understanding what I just figured out, and my life hasn't changed. So, like, me understanding that, did it really ruin my existence? Because it's still going on. You understand what I'm getting at? Like, but you have this fear of, like, accepting something sometimes that you just realized. That rocked you to your core. There's almost a fear of an acceptance of it that still fucks you up.
Yeah. Yeah, I still deal with that.
And then you feel like then you realize there was no fear behind that. Like, it was silly.
Yeah, it was completely ridiculous that you acted that way about it, but it's almost like you have to do that. Yeah. Because to experience it so that you can understand it on a deeper level.
For sure. Again, that's what I think is the difference between a faith and knowing. Sometimes those things will rock you to the core and it's a little bit hard to accept because now you really know it. With the sacred geometry, I just wanted to get back to two things that I did want to bring up, and then maybe we'll wrap it up there, and I'll definitely have you on for another topic, and
Okay,
stuff.
that'd be great.
I had a great chat so far. With like sacred geometry, I guess like the two things I wanted to ask is, again, like I mentioned, the tree of life. You get all these spheres and all these numbers. I guess the first thing I wanted to get into is, I guess, the spheres and the numbers. Do you think those even pertain to like the geometry? And then, like, let's say like the 8th sphere, is that going to have like a shape that has 8, like a star with 8 sides? You know what I'm getting at?
I'm getting truth bumps on that. I think there is correspondence there.
Yes,
for sure, because of all the other correspondences that are usually associated with the tree of life.
Like, I know, like,
So
when you
why-
start getting into, like,
why-
I guess the associations with the spheres, there's always, like, a shape that is associated with it.
Yes, and a color, and an
Yes.
angel, and and an element, and
Yeah.
if you get farther enough in that, you start to see that. So if sacred geometry makes up the fabric of space and time,
It's funny. The top part, when you start getting into the shapes, is what's at the bottom. Like, you know what I'm talking about with the associations? Is that what's manifested from the shape up here? If you want to
Yeah,
start getting
so-
that crazy with the colors and
yes.
stuff.
So, like, for me, Malkut would represent a cube, right? Okay, so because that's like 3D Earth that's here. And so why couldn't it progress more and more and more up the tree as you work through the Sephiroth, right? And people don't really understand the tree of life, what it really is. It's not some thing. It's just a guideline to go down the different paths, right? People think of it like a cross, like a Christian cross, right?
Mm.
It's so much more than that. And you're only seeing a small portion of it. It's just a representation of energy and the shifts of energy that you reside in at any given time. And sometimes you can manipulate that energy, and sometimes you can change that energy. But all that is just a guideline, right? So why wouldn't it have shapes associated with it? Why wouldn't it have geometric shapes associated with it? Because it makes up the foundation or basis of our reality as we know it.
Yeah, no,
All
I
this is
agree.
mental, right? Let's talk about Hermeticism for a while. All is mind, right? Think of it from that perspective. So if all is mind, then everything that I'm seeing is all mental and it's in my mind. So if it's in my mind, to have those different perspectives, hell yeah, it could definitely be part of it. It's probably all fucking connected, and we only see tiny little snippets of it.
Yeah.
And that's what drives me fucking crazy, is because I can only see little snippets of what's fucking really going on. And it's like I'm in a constant search for the whole fucking picture. And we can't see that here.
Yes.
So
yes.
we practice to see it on an energetic level.
Well, you went back, you mentioned before, I think, about, being here and then, like, kind of, like, being able to cross over into the other, the abyss or whatever. I mean, I really do think, or the spirit world, I mean, my opinion, that is what the all-seeing eye is. You're able to look at both, you're able to see both existence.
Yeah.
But, like, oh, no, horrible, satanic. No, it just means that... That's like, in my opinion, that's all, I don't know how it got used now, but I mean, thinking about it just at its basic level, an all-seeing eye would just really is just something, fucking swivel camera, really.
Yeah. And we're all fucking floating around looking out of that motherfucker.
Some people are just stuck with one way, others can move around a little bit more, that's it.
Yeah. And so magicians can move around in all directions. Right? That's the point.
Yes.
That's the point of
Now,
it. Once you realize that.
What you do after you have those experiences, now that's a totally different story, but...
Yeah. You can go down the wrong one, and you can go... You can
turn
go
into
the
an
right
egomaniac.
way, wrong way, middle, backwards, fucking forwards. However you want to fucking do it, that's up to you, but I guess that's part of your path, That's part of some people's path. They got to go down that road before they fucking figure it out. And
then the other thing I wanted to ask you was with, like, the sigils. because I do see, you know, I used to normally use like the magic square, which I'm sure you understand what that is. It goes along with the Kabbalah and planetary magic. That is, you know, a square shape, obviously, thing to do the sigils. And then I do see, like I mentioned before we started recording, you have the other that I've seen the Golden Dawn do their thing for the sigils too behind you. What's the name for that specifically again? The name for that sigil?
Let me pull this book out real quick, and I got it from Damien's book, Ritual. Okay. So,
because I think that might be called like the Rosicrucian something, maybe.
It is. It's very, so the middle of it is very Rosicrucian. Okay. So it's the Rose Cross Sigil Creator.
Rose Cross.
Okay. So basically, like, I'm trying to get my camera right. This is how it's used. So you start in the middle. I'm trying to get that straight. I can't.
Looks perfect right there. You're good.
Okay. So what you do is you copy this and you use the center point for the first letter, right? And you draw a circle and then you draw the lines out. Okay. And it is, the Golden Dawn created this. So this is what they used. And so for me, this is the simplest form without having to get deep into like, all that complicated stuff, making sigils with math and angles and all that shit. When I want to make a sigil, I want to make it fucking quick because I want to use it right then. Right? So for me, I'm being lazy about it. and I'm using that because in a pinch, if I need something real quick, I just draw it up, charge it, and then use it.
Now,
So,
do you think those? The reason I was bringing that up is because now I do understand that if I was to make a sigil with that, and I think a sigil with the planetary squares, well, obviously it's going to look completely different. Even though I could have like used the same phrase, word, whatever it was. Yeah. Do you think those things in itself, in you know, in their own way, are actually like you're creating your own sacred geometry in a sense?
Yes.
Because like especially with those. Or especially with the planetary squares, it's just literally all angles. Again, you're not drawing any circular shit. It's one line to the next. Oh, I think I lost you. Yes.
Oh.
I think I lost you for 1 second.
Yeah, because I think you lost me for a little bit.
Okay, you're good though now.
But yeah, so that's. Yeah, so when you start they say that when you start drawing sacred geometry, that you start to get downloads as well. If you start drawing it yourself, which I've tried, and it's fucking way harder than it looks. Like it really, really is. And I have no artistic ability whatsoever. So, but when you start drawing it, you start to receive downloads and start to understand things a little bit better. So yes, definitely when you're making sigils, you are definitely drawing shapes, probably ones that you're not even fully aware of. Okay. And then it's all about intention. So it doesn't matter what method you use. It's all about your intention. So if your intention is right, people like to say there's rules about doing things. I say, fuck that. I don't like rules like, okay, you have to do this a certain way or practice this a certain way or do things this way. I take things that I learn and I modify them for me. I figure things out through trial and error about what works for me in my energetic field. So yeah, what you're saying, definitely when you draw these shapes, I mean, yeah, like you are doing sacred geometry, and think about what you're doing on an energetic level, just even doing, you know, you're drawing, you know, your signs and sigils and charging them and everything when you're doing your magic. It's like you're doing the same shit. You're just doing it on an energetic level that you can't perceive with your eyes, but you're doing it. It's the same thing when you're making talismans and sigils. You're using your energy. Oh, and by the way, guys, never use your own when you're doing this shit. You got to take your energy in from outside first and then put it outward, or else you'll end up in burnout. I figured that out the fucking hard way when I was using my own energy to create shit like that. And then you'll fucking burn out your meridians and shit. So you need to make sure that when you're practicing that you're taking the energy from the etheric and usually into your heart chakra and then you are letting it go out throughout your arms. Whenever you're charging something or doing that, because if you don't, eventually you'll experience a fucking burnout.
You know what's interesting for me? I there was just really weird that you actually just said that. I used to actually, there was times in either talismans or other things that I was working with. I did have I'll admit it, I made a servitor at one point. And, it was silly, but whatever. When it worked really well, actually.
It fucking works. It works, you know?
But, I would, and, you know, I guess maybe I was also, I think I also choose to do it this way. So then in my mind, I figured if I was able to feel opening up my heart chakra and trying to push out energy, just for me, I was assuming if I'm able to feel that and do that, I don't think this is really coming from such a fucked up place in my head. But right. I used to actually, believe it or not, sometimes to, I guess, disperse energy, like you were saying, into my circle to try to work with. I actually would focus on my heart chakra first. Yeah. And I would literally just try to envision, like, green light just shining out of it. Yes. Filling up the area that I want to work with. Yeah. And I've actually I don't think I've ever said that on my show. I actually ever said that to anybody. So it was just really weird that you said that, because I was like, fuck, I've done that before. It's like if I would use this to create the field I want to work with.
No, weird. Yeah, I do that all the time. So I even practice pushing out my aura farther than mine goes out farther than most, I figured out. Because I'd taken this divining rod class that my mentor does or whatever. And so she wanted us to stand in front of our partner with the divining rods, and she had to go back, like walk back abnormally longer back, like further back, because my energetic field was fucking the shit up and it was making everybody spin. But so I practiced pushing my aura, my auric field out farther. And when you practice magic, that naturally occurs when you're doing that, and you don't realize that you're pushing your auric field out even further. And so like exactly what you did, like when you start filling up a room or, you know, your circle with that energy, if you're not replenishing it from an outside source, you can experience like meridian burnout.
No. When you said that, I was like, oh, I know exactly what that means.
Yeah. So, but yeah.
I've even done that with meditations. Prior to meditations,
yes.
I'll try to do that just to, I guess, like, and not to sound cheesy or not, but just to make sure that, like, you know, everything's in the right mindset and I'm doing this for the right reason. And as silly as that sounds.
Yeah,
you know?
It all needs to come from that middle, that heart chakra. That's actually where our brain is at, really.
Well, there is an attachment there. You know, yeah, for sure. Another thing I wanted to ask, just I guess about the shapes, is that you know, with those sigils, you know, I've also often wondered. I guess, like, I'll use the phrase, "There's nothing new under the sun," or even some of these shapes that we're drawing on these sigils and things already like stored shit in the back of our brain.
Yeah. Oh.
That we're just tapping into.
No. I'm glad you said that, because I've had personal experience with this. So when I started studying it, I would do meditations, and then I would get these shapes that I'd never seen before, and then I would fucking go on an image search, and I would find that shit. Like, and then I'll be like, yes, that's it, when I didn't even know fucking shit about it.
I've seen that. I've that's happened to me with, like, visions that I've seen. I'll end up seeing it on the internet and be like, fuck, come on.
Yeah. So, yes, I believe that your soul holds a record of everything, right? And so, yeah, you can.
Do you think that's the Akashic Records?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So you can definitely, for sure, that's where the downloads come from. It's because you already know the shit. You're just awakening to it and being able to perceive it at that particular time when it's supposed to crack your fucking psyche wide open, if you will. Yes. So, yeah, I believe this stuff is deeply ingrained in us and has been for fucking millennia.
That's why I think sometimes ice, like, this is just my opinion, I feel like ice sometimes is used in an occult symbolism in an occult way. I mean, like Iron Maiden's Seventh Son of a Seventh Son album was all basically ice and fucking water. Sometimes I think that stuff is just to symbolize you're going back into the deep, dark parts of your brain that you haven't been in a while. It's been fucking dead and frozen forever.
Yes.
And now you're just starting to get into archetypes, thoughts, ideas, and shapes, and that's it.
Like, I'm so excited that you said that shit because I've had that theory for so long and I never get to talk to anybody about it because I would say some shit like that and they'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? And so this is like so cool to me that like we're talking about this in this way because I've felt this way for so long, but you can't just start spouting this shit off. But I honestly do think like all this is within us. And like you said, there is nothing new under the sun. This is all ingrained, like soul imprints. Even all this stuff gets imprinted in our soul. And imagine like, you know, when we're on the other side, I mean, of course we're going to carry all that with us. And I believe it even comes out in our DNA and our offspring, our soul memories. Yeah. Right.
Yes, I agree.
And so how would I come into this world not knowing any of this shit and automatically when I'm a fucking kid that doesn't know anything, start thinking about this deep ass shit on a level that how would I even understand that, right?
Yo, sometimes if people were to really pay attention when it comes out of kids' mouths, sometimes like I really do think they see the world more legit than we do.
I'm telling you, and I haven't.
And it's like, where does that come from?
I know, like past life memories. I have a few of them. And so I know for a fact that shit's real because I've personally experienced it.
No, sometimes I really do think like the best example, way to explain our existence is like we're the past being thrown into the future. Yeah. And we forgot where we came from. Yes.
Yeah, Graham Hancock says that a lot.
Oh, does he?
Like, I read a little bit of Graham Hancock's books. You know, I'm like I said, I'm like into everything, right? Well, he says that a beautiful quote that like we are a species of amnesia, that we have forgotten, you know, the truth, and we've become so disconnected from our roots and from our spirituality that it's so fucking far behind us that a lot of people just live like zombies in the world and just day to day. They don't question anything. They don't, you know. It's like we've gotten so far away from the original point that I think that's what's some of the major problems in the world today is we've become so fucking disconnected.
I think you nailed it right there.
Yeah.
That's a really good way. And I think we'll wrap it up like that too.
Okay.
I had that was an awesome talk. I really thank you so much.
I loved it, man.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely have to have more chats. And like I said, I definitely even want to get you on for a couple other topics anyway. Okay. So that was a really, really great chat for real. I'm so happy I reached out to you. See, this is why I follow back people that follow me, is because I actually think, you know, I'm not the only person who's got something to say. I like to see what other people, you know. Yeah. And here you are. You're on the show now, and I had an amazing fucking talk with you.
Yeah.
Look how that works.
I feel the same, man. Thank you so
look
much.
how that works. So let everybody know where they can find your account again.
Okay, so Instagram, it's 7 degrees of wisdom, no dashes, no numbers. That's how you can find me on Instagram. I've got tons of content, tons of book recommendations, all kinds of occult shit. My bio says magical content creator because everything that I learn and delve into, it's on my page. So if you guys are interested in any of that stuff, and if you even want to shoot me questions, I love talking about this stuff. So that's how you can find me on Instagram. And then Facebook, I'm Megan Allen, and then in parentheses spelled out 7 degrees of wisdom on Facebook. So I do tarot readings. I do online stuff too, guys. I teach classes and tarot readings and birth charts and everything. I'm into pretty much everything. So definitely looking to grow my business for sure. So if you guys are interested in any of that, just get a hold of me, DM me. We can do an online appointment. And again, thanks, Nick, so much for having me on.
Of course. No, thank you.
I super appreciate it. Thanks for letting me plug myself. So
of course.
It's been great, man.
No, that was, like I said, that was a really, really fun talk. There's not, again, like I was saying before, there's only so many, I guess, practicing people that I could really have conversations with that.
I feel the same.
That we're even on like the same level. I'm not saying that I'm above it. It's just that we see it the same way. There's so many different point of views and ways of looking at this stuff and practicing this stuff. It's just,
Yeah.
So that was a really awesome chat. And definitely, I'm definitely going to have you back for a few other topics. That's it. That's yeah. Her link will definitely be in the bottom. So when you're watching this, listening to it, you want to find her stuff, her link is in the show notes. My links are in the show notes. If you're listening, again, there is video. There's BitChute, Rumble, and YouTube for video. And I'm on all major podcasts. If you are watching this, I'm also on podcasts. And I do have a TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter all on the bottom. If you want to check out my shit posting, you can always hit up those. And that is the end of another NY Patriot episode. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.